Okay, it's time to connect with Outten Astrophotography. Let's hand the stream over to Hunter.
Okay, let me show the cameras. Okay.
Hello there, everybody.
Hey,
Happy
hello.
to be here.
We can hear. Yeah. Okay. Here, welcome Austin and Hunter to here's their presentation, and we are really looking forward to it. Okay, Hunter, this is your time. Okay. Go.
Oh yes, there's a lot of good targets that are coming up for the winter season, and I'm here to share with a couple of some, really cool targets that you get to check out for this winter season coming up, because the summer is filled with tons of nebulae. That doesn't stop there. All throughout the fall and the winter months, we do get a lot of wonderful imaging targets to go throughout the entire duration of the winter season, if you can brace the cold or not. So we're going to go ahead and share my screen over here. As long as I pick the right one. Here we go. As long as that shows up on that side. There we go. So this is deep sky imaging with myself, Outten Astrophotography. I just want to give you a little bit of some background about, myself. My name is Hunter, and I am a NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador, which means I am a basically certified volunteer for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I do a lot of STEM education, research. I teach space camp down at NASA Wallops Island. The last couple of years, I teach a lot of, astronomy, astrophotography now, since I've been an astrophotographer for the past 7 years, but I've also been a visual observer for the last 20. So I spend a ton of time outside, out in the night sky. Now I'm just really getting into the astrophotography aspect the past couple of years. I do have a heliophysics background, as I study a lot of relationship between the sun and the moon dynamics. And when I'm not, under the night sky to telescope, my day job during the day, I am a broadcast meteorologist seen across the United States, which is really, really neat to do. Some things we're going to go over, since Vlad actually covered this one topic for me, going on with the comets, but we're also going to be talking about some deep sky targets as well. But I wanted to share a photo that I did recently of Comet C2025 A6 Lemon, which is going to be still visible here throughout the next couple of months. And this is actually taken with this telescope right here, the SVBONY SB503, which is the 80 millimeter version doublet refractor, and it did very, very well. I'm going to actually have an entire review of this scope here doing the imaging likely tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. This was a set of 1-minute exposures that's taken with 60 seconds with a one-shot color camera, a filter, and a basic tracking mount. You can capture images just like this too of Lemon, but you have to kind of catch it soon because it is getting a little bit lower in the morning sky right now, not too far away from Ursa Major. So just to keep that in mind, it is going to get brighter, but it is going to be getting a little bit lower towards the ground. But we are going to be talking about some more in the way of some deep sky targets. This one right here, great one for, people who are imaging in the narrowband aspect. So this is where you take your camera, like you have a one-shot color camera, or even a simple DSLR that is connected up to your camera will do the job just well. You also will need some filters here. You have different wavelength filters. You can have it in the single band passes like hydrogen alpha, oxygen 3, and sulfur 2. Where you can get those individual gases for the nice, beautiful color that you see there of the heart, and it actually resembles it pretty well. Now, for visual aspects for this, it is kind of hard to see visually. Really, with cameras and some filters, you can really make targets like this shine very well. So where is this in the night sky? Well, you have to look over towards the north and east right now, and it's only going to get higher up as the winter season goes. It's kind of between the constellations of Cassiopeia, which is the queen over in the northeast skies, kind of look like a W. You can actually follow that straight from Polaris, where you can follow it straight over to that W in the sky, and you'll be able to actually see two very bright nebulas right next to each other, the Heart Nebula and the Soul Nebula, which those with a combo, you can get some really wonderful images for this target. And you can even image this in full, like a full moon. That's what happened with this image here, was also taken with the 80 millimeter SV503. So that's also going to be in the video tomorrow. I talk about this because this is probably the best image of the Heart Nebula I have done. I'm actually really, really impressed at this scope of what it was able to pull out. But next target, not too far along down the way, we have the California Nebula. This is NGC 1499. This is in the constellation of Perseus. This is a fairly large emission nebula filled with hydrogen gases. This is all of that red structure. And if you look kind of closely, if you're familiar with geography, it does resemble the look of the state of California, which is where it gets its name from. This is located in Perseus, like I mentioned, and you'll be able to find this right at the tail end. This will still be in the northeast sky. You'll find the very bright star Murphak in that constellation, and you can follow that straight down is where you will find this very large hydrogen emission nebula here. A simple, one-shot color camera, DSLR will do just perfectly fine for this target. Just give like a little bit of some exposure time, a couple hours, and you'll be able to have a very, very nice image of this target. And right next door to it is a very familiar asterism of stars in the sky. You might notice as the Pleiades. Pleiades will be making its view already now in the night sky, but it only gets up in a lot better view. A lot of people sometimes will mistake the Pleiades star cluster as the Little Dipper at times, since it kind of does resemble a little bit of a dipper, but there's also something very, really interesting hidden inside of this cluster of stars. It's actually filled with nebulosity. You have something called IFM, which is intergalactic flux nebulae, which is all of the outskirts of our own galaxy's dust being illuminated by the starlight in front of it. And inside of the cluster itself, you have the Monroe Nebula, which is on the bottom end, very bright reflection nebulae. This one will require a little bit of some darker skies and some patience to really be able to pull out some of this nebulosity. But if you have like a wider view setup, like an 80 millimeter or 70 millimeter refractor, you can also use a simple camera lens, kind of similar to something like this. Now, this is using a Canon camera lens that has hooked up to a camera back here with a filter wheel, all this kind of stuff. So you don't really need, a big, massive, like 12 or 14-inch telescope to do astrophotography and get some wonderful, images. Simple camera lens or a DSLR will get the job done very, very nicely. So where is the nebula in itself? Well, pretty easy to find. You find the Seven Sisters in the eastern portions of the sky now this time of year, which is connected to the constellation of Taurus. Super easy to find. Set your exposure, have that tracking mount, and be ready to be wowed at what this constellation and this cluster has in store for you. So now we go over to the granddaddy of the winter sky, and we are waiting the Great Orion Nebula. Now, this nebula is one of the most breathtaking things that you can see in the night sky, because not only you can image it, you can also see this visually very well. In fact, with some of the larger aperture, like the MK127, you will actually see the intricate structure of the Orion Nebula visually without a filter or with a filter to kind of help with, depending on some of the light pollution in your area. And there's also another nebula that hides right next to it, which is the Running Man Nebula. It's also associated with the Orion Nebula complex. And Orion Nebula is super easy to find in the night sky. Well, if you know what the constellation Orion looks like, if you notice where the belt is of the 3 stars, that's a good indicator. And right down the side is Orion's sword. Now, if you didn't know, Orion's sword actually has the Orion Nebula. It is naked eye, but it looks like a star from the visual eye. But a pair of binoculars, small telescope, will bring out that nebula beautifully. And this is one to actually share with a lot of, your family members and your friends. And it's just, once you look at this nebula, you will remember it for the rest of your life. I visit this target every single winter season I can and always image it. I don't care how many times I've imaged it. It will always be in my graphs during this time of year, because you can also pick up a lot of hidden nebulosity. But also, speaking with something that's right nearby in the constellation of Orion, is another very fan favorite, the Flame and Horsehead Nebula. Now, I'm sure you have seen countless amount of images of this target here and the infamous Horsehead Nebula. This is right near a bright star known as Alnitak, which sometimes gives some astrophotographers some big headaches, especially trying to tame for the brightness of it. But we have the Flame Nebula down on the side here, which looks like, a flame that's coming out horizontally. You do have a hidden reflection nebula here, M78, and then you have that famous Horsehead. So where is the Horsehead here? Well, you follow the Orion's belt, and the third star over, which is the star Alnitak, is exactly where this set of nebulae are. Definitely for this one, you would want to have some narrowband filters to be able to kind of really bring up that nice deep red oxygen. But you can also do this as a broadband, just without a filter, to kind of bring out that more natural color to it. And you can really resolve a lot of dust out in this region, because basically the entire constellation of Orion is just one big area of just nebulosity all around. You could point at your camera at any portion of this constellation, and you're always going to find some sort of nebula with it. So that's always a very, really brilliant one. And then with the last one, we have the Rosette Nebula. Now, this is one of my all-time favorite emission nebulas here, just because of the intricate structure that you would see. And it's also my wife's favorite nebula that I like to image for her all the time. But the Rosette Nebula, where is that in the sky? Well, this is located in the constellation of Monoceros, which is right next door to the Orion Nebula. You'll be able to find it if you follow Orion's belt straight over, and you'll see this very large nebula here, which responds greatly in all three of the typical narrowband channels: hydrogen alpha, oxygen 3, and sulfur 2, to get that brilliant, core structure. And there's also a very nice star cluster located on the inside of the cluster itself. Some people call this the Skull Nebula, but to me, it looks more like a rose. You have that really deep oxygen structure in the center. You have the dark nebulae that's kind of sticking out from this. You can get this entire image within about 1 hour of total exposure time. It's very, very bright, and it's a wonderful treat. Super easy to find. And with some larger telescopes, you can actually see a little bit of this visually too, once you start getting into like the 8-inch or maybe 10-inch size scopes to be able to view that. And I still actually had one more target, and that is the Seagull Nebula. This is in Canis Major, or also known as the Big Dog constellation, which is kind of lower in the southern sky. This is also a great target because it looks just like a seagull. If you happen to be living in the coastal regions like I do on the east coast of the United States, this one definitely reminds me of home, being always attacked by the seagulls when I'm trying to get those Thrasher French fries from the boardwalk. But where to find the Seagull Nebula? Well, if you know where Sirius is, the brightest star of the winter night sky, it's in relative position of that over by the head of the Great Dog. Right over towards the left of that, you have this really large emission nebula. And with some of the wider telescopes, you can actually get another fan favorite deep sky target known as Thor's Helmet, which is strictly all oxygen and is a wonderful emission nebula target if you happen to be living in the, the southern portions of the United States or closer towards the equator, because this one is a little bit lower in the sky for the northern hemisphere viewers, but southern hemisphere definitely has this a lot better. So that is basically a wrap up there. You can find everything, what I do through YouTube, Outten Astrophotography, Facebook, or if you want to see a lot of my images there, Astrobin, or if you have, students or cousins that are in ages of 11 to 17 and want to get involved into space camp, also look into VASFA, Virginia Space Flight Academy, where we have a lot of great programs to help you out and get you into space astronomy and even some rocketry.
Okay, thank you so much for Hunter sharing so many targets in our during this winter's targets, and so many targets we can capture, and also our Hunter has shown that our this products, our SV503 and 80mm version. In my behind, this is our 102mm version. And right now, we are also having a great discounts for our refractors of our SV503 telescopes. And of course, and also Hunter has shown some of the wide field targets. And also we have our SV555, and this is one specially designed for our wide field astrophotography, and it's a very short focal length, and also support full frames and for the wide field astrophotography. And thank you again for Hunters. And
Okay, thank you,
No problem.
Hunter,
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again for us as well. We really appreciate you both for bringing us such a fantastic feast of astronomy knowledge.